welcome to the regional heats of the Ferrari Esports Series 2023.
Yes, we're nearly at the checkered flag, but before we enter that final straight, we have the challenge of the regional heats to get through.
And Mike's endless idioms about racing.
Yep.
But yeah, OK, so it's the regional heat. The pressure is on for these drivers because they know that grand final is just off the distance.
Yeah,
really
absolutely.
Soon. Yeah.
We're in for a blinder, actually, and I cannot wait to see how our drivers tackle this next circuit because practice absolutely makes perfect. But before we do that, let's have a big round of applause for our resident analyst, Matt Gallagher.
Yeah! Go on, Matt.
Thank you.
OK, we're getting, it's getting close to crunch time. Pressure's on, like, what level of pressure are these guys at? Are they having to meditate? What's going on?
Oh, well, I don't know about that. That's personal preference. But I think, you know, as you go along the tournament and towards this sort of crunch time, you do genuinely start to wonder, oh, what is it going to be like if I do win this tournament? You start to get ahead of yourself a little bit, hence why I'm not competing and I'm talking about it, because I'm probably not cut out for it. But, you know, it's getting to the serious end of the competition.
Yeah, you've had a bit of a chance to see all of the regions now. Is there any sense, any inkling of who might be coming out on top in terms of the regions?
There's strong drivers in all of them, but I think the strongest of drivers seem to be in Europe at the moment. When you look at the fastest laps across each of the regions, it's definitely Europe for me. But look, there could be one star driver in each of them that could come out on top.
And Mount Panorama, I mean, it's really not for the faint of heart. I mean, you're in, you're out. You've got to commit to this fully or just forget it.
Yeah, I steer clear of this track if I can, mainly because I think it's probably the second hardest track to learn behind the Nordschleife itself. There's a lot of committing that's needed from the driver, especially at the top of the hill. It's very narrow. It's very easy to make a mistake as well. The racing's going to be interesting, though, because there are those narrow parts of the circuit, but there's also some very high-speed sections, easy places to outbrake your opponents. So it's going to be fascinating.
Yep, there you go. Super tough circuit. Let's find out exactly how tough in our track guide. Welcome to Mount Panorama Circuit, the jewel of Australian motorsport. This iconic track in Bathurst, New South Wales, is a thrilling challenge that separates the best from the rest. To conquer Mount Panorama, you'll need speed and accuracy. Make sure you master the cutting, Reed Park and Sulman Park to get the advantage early on. An important part of the track to focus on is Brock's Skyline, which is a sharply descending right-hand corner. This also marks the start of the S's, an extremely challenging part of the track that leads all the way to Forest Elbow. The most famous of the S's, the Dipper, is a sharp left-hand corner, which has seen even the most skilled driver come unstuck. Mount Panorama is the ultimate proving ground, and the consequences of a mistake can be huge. Remember these tips, and you'll be on your way to conquering this legendary track. Definitely one of the toughest circuits out there. Matt, do you have any advice for our drivers going into this one?
Is anything going to really help?
Is there anything that can help?
Well, for me, I said avoid the track. They can't do that. Not in a competition. I think you've just got to take it easy at the start. You know, you don't have to win. It's not the grand final. You just have to make it through in those qualification spots. It's going to depend exactly what kind of driver you are. You'll know your pace innately. You've done the practice, you've done the qualifying. You'll know roughly where you sit in this pecking order of drivers. So if you're a slightly slower one, I'd just say go for it, you know, in those first few laps, because the drivers that are slightly quicker will know they have that buffer and potentially just take it a little bit easier in those first laps. So it really depends on how much risk you're willing to put in those first few laps.
Yeah, it is a track of margins, essentially, right? I mean, the fastest line is getting right up millimetres away from the wall up in that mountain section. Would you be looking to sort of keep a bit of a buffer, a bit of a safety buffer, or would you be going for that fastest line?
Again, it depends where you are in the field. I think especially those fast drivers that are confident will be happy to do that because they've put the practice in, they've got the talent in order to be able to deliver that. But the drivers that are potentially a little bit slower might be banking on a driver slightly quicker, going a little bit too close to the wall and then crashing into the wall because, you know, that section is so difficult that you really have to just take it easy and sort of assess where you are. Because you don't have to win. You don't have to win. This is what I have to keep saying, is that you don't have to get P1 in this particular part of the tournament.
And, you know, as you say, you could be following someone. It's quite easy to follow someone into their accident as well, when all you've got is the back of their car and then walls surrounding you.
Yeah, you can easily be a roadblock very quickly. So it's not just you making your own mistakes, it's drivers ahead that you have to keep an eye out for as well, because once you're through that really difficult section, you're then into a much faster last sector. That's where you want to be sort of sizing up your moves to make an overtake. You don't want to be doing one at the top of the hill. That's just don't do it.
And one thing they aren't going to have to deal with is the odd stray kangaroo, which I have seen in real races at Bathurst, but I don't think that's simulated in the game.
No, I haven't seen any sort of mod patch notes for that particular one, but maybe next year.
Yeah.
Someone must have done it, honestly. You think you've thought it, someone's modded it.
Yeah.
Guaranteed.
Absolutely. Well, I think it's time now to head over to the race itself, so let's throw to our casters Luke Crane and Arjuna Kankapati.
Ladies and gentlemen, boys and girls, welcome to the regional heats for the Ferrari Esports Series 2023. We have got APAC first up for you, and they are at the very challenging, if not the most challenging circuit. They will face all competition long Mount Panorama, or otherwise known as Bathurst. My name is Luke Crane. I am joined by the beautifully delicious Arjuna Kankapati. How you doing, bud? You all good?
Doing great, looking forward to this. You said it right there. Mount Panorama might be one of the most difficult tracks in all of global motorsports, of course, nestled up with elevation, and you add to that then the climb up and down of 175 meters of elevation. Of course, just surviving 30 minutes of racing is going to be very difficult for the drivers here today, but they're all doing so with the reward being a spot in the regional finals.
So Arjuna, not only are they going to be racing against the toughest opposition so far this championship, but they also have the challenge of Mount Panorama. What a day.
And they're doing it for the very first time in the brand new Ferrari 296 GT3, of course. Some of these drivers qualified on Assetto Corsa, some qualified on Assetto Corsa Competizione, but they all now, for the very first time, jump into this car. They've all been competing in the 488 GT3s before this, or the 488 Challenge. Going to be curious to see who adapts to that the most, but what does GT3 mean, Luke? It means you do have driver aid, anti-lock brakes, and traction control to help you just a little bit over the 30-minute race.
And you're going to need that, that's for sure, especially over the mountain section of Mount Panorama. It is a beautiful place to race, but the risks are absolutely massive. You just mentioned it there. A few drivers have qualified on AC, a few drivers have qualified on ACC. Obviously, that means that the ACC drivers should have the advantage, but the fact that we're using a new car, does that even the playing field?
It should, especially because Assetto Corsa Competizione, we're racing with open setups. The drivers have the ability to fine-tune the balance of the car, especially important at a bumpy track like Mount Panorama, which is made up mostly of public roads. Anyone can go and drive up the mountain in regular 30-kilometer-an-hour conditions. Very different experience, though, when you're going up there and pushing to the very limit. And that's going to be one thing where drivers who are maybe more familiar with the nuances of Assetto Corsa Competizione and the tire model, how those Pirelli tires are simulated, they'll be the drivers with a bit of an advantage.
Yeah, a slight change to what we've seen previously. Of course, we've seen races where there is a mandatory pit stop. That is not the case anymore. The format has changed where the race is 30 minutes long. So no real strategy here. It is going to be a sprint from start to finish, but we have seen tyres wear out really, really quickly with the latest update on ACC, something that the AC drivers have not had to deal with as of yet. Around here, it is a high deg circuit, so you still have to look after the tyres a little bit at the start, but this is a whole different challenge for these drivers, Arjuna.
I think, like you say, the fact that we remove that mandatory pit stop and now just push for the 30 minutes slightly changes the game. Yes, some will say that in the qualifying races, they were 60-minute races with the mandatory pit stop. You could break the race into 2 30-minute stints, but it wasn't with the expectation that the checkered flag flies after the first 30 minutes. We know at Mount Panorama there's not going to be too many opportunities to pass. You're going to need to make sure in those opening laps you don't get too broken away from those up towards the front, and make sure you come away with a decent finish and hopefully your car in a relatively factory fresh condition.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, being in that top 12 will get you through to the next stage of the competition. But how important is it for the drivers today to set a marker against their fellow competitors? Because ultimately, they're going to be racing against these very same drivers later on in the finals.
So yeah, of course, this is the regional heats building up to the regional finals before that final step, the grand finals to crown the winner of the 2023 Ferrari Esports Championship. I think this race is going to be one where we're going to see who's the most comfortable with Mount Panorama. Who knows where we're going to be racing after this, Luke? Drivers are going to get a better sense for who knows the track the most. We maybe will get a better sense of where they all sit with their understanding of the car.
Yeah, 100% it is on that. Who knows the track the most? But anyway, enough from me and Arjuna. That's waffling. It's now time to go and check out our drivers as they are gridding up for our race. And we are now green light racing. And Jeff Newton, one of the favourites to go out and win this, has got himself a drive-through penalty. That is not ideal. Giacomin then sent out wide and actually runs onto the grass there. Should be okay through Hell Corner. And now it's the long run up towards turn number 1. But Sang has got an absolutely delightful start, a perfect start if you like, and leads the way.
Can Yat Long go around the outside of Griffin's Bend? There's a very uncomfortable bump in the crown of the road. You want to be on the inside, and so the Scarlet Red 296 of Giacomin gonna hold on. But now this is the first major bottleneck. The climb up through the left-hander of turn 3, the double sort of left of the cutting. Single file, they'll safely get on through, continuing the climb up toward the top of the mountain, but that's the first difficult section navigated, and everyone safely gets on through.
Yeah, Jeff Newton has got a drive-through for being too far back, actually, in the start position. He's gone down to 6th position from 3rd. Schaumann has just tagged the wall there through turn number 4. And actually lost the position to Newton. So Newton says P6, but in a minute, once they come through Skyline, as we're seeing right now, lovely shots here. I think this is the best helicopter shots in all of sim racing, by the way, on ACC here at Mount Panorama specifically. Look at this. There is the dipper, as we mentioned in the formation lap. It's just a real spectacle. But yeah, Newton should move up into a top 5, but a perfect start then. Sang, Giacomin, Yat Long, Miura, in that top 4, all good. Expect this to be a lot closer than what we've seen so far in this championship.
Yeah, I think this is where as well the first inklings on who's getting their tires into the appropriate window will get a pretty good sense of that. Remember, the first 2 laps where you get the most performance out of the tire, and we tend to see a bit of a drop-off, but not a linear drop-off. It settles into a sort of rhythm. There's Yat Long running very wide up towards the chase and almost running back into the path of oncoming traffic. Miura's going to slide on through into a podium spot, but more drama down at that heavy braking zone that I mentioned earlier today.
Yeah, 100%. They were close going into the chicane down the bottom of the Conrad straight there. So I'm wondering whether there's been some naughty between the 2 of them, and that is why Yat Long has ended off the circuit. Maybe we'll get to see that once again. But yeah, P4 now for Yat Long. Miura does make up a position up to P3. Sang, by the way, has absolutely flown away. 1.6 seconds is the advantage, but as we have seen, if you go off too quickly, if you overheat those tires or take a little bit too much out of them early in the race, it will hurt you later on. So Sang, I'm sure, will be fine, but you know, there is every reason to suggest that there might be an opportunity for everyone else to catch back up if they've been looking after their tyres. Jeff Newton, again, I've given him the curse a little bit here. I said he's one of the favourites to do well. Unfortunately, he's now dropped down to P8, so yeah, dropping further and further back. I guess that would have been actually because he's taken a drive-through penalty. So yeah, I need to just pay more attention.
Yes, did come down and has dropped behind all but Stuart Anderson. Everyone else has cycled in front of someone that, in fact, right as I say that, swap around there as well. But it's going to be a bit of a recovery drive for Newton. We'll see what he's going to be able to do. I think most of the fighting is going to be for around this 5th position, where the Kong line's building up behind Sharman, a couple machines building up, and as we head down to the very bottom of the mountain, we're going to run in that draft once again. 15 laps is what we're expecting here. 15 laps of survival and getting very close to the outside of the wall on the exit down the hill.
Yeah, I think that was a little bit closer than close. I think he might have hit that wall there, Arjuna, full force as well. So Sharman lost maybe a couple of tenths there and actually lost the opportunity to maybe make an overtake, which in that white/silver Ferrari, I'm telling you now it's white. Yat Long in P4 in the blue Ferrari, number 15. Doing really well right now, holding on to that P4 in behind Miura by about 1.7 seconds. Once they cross the next timing beam, we'll get a look at exactly as to what the time is. It's now still 1.7, actually caught up by a couple of hundredths of a second. Giacomin is not losing as much time to Sang as he was earlier on, so that says to me that he's just been bedding in those tyres nicely, so maybe expect Giacomin to be a little bit faster as the race goes on. Newton already overtaking Anderson then, so Anderson drops down to 11th position. Jeff Newton, after that drive-through penalty, moves up to 10th. Plummer in 9th, Newman in 8th. We've then got Brian Lay in 7th, Nur Hidyat in 6th, Sharman, Yat Long, Miura, Giacomin, Sang still leads the way with the fastest lap.
You can see in the top right, pretty perfect conditions for racing. Track is in an optimum grip state with slight cloud cover, but no rain forecasted within the next 25 minutes that we will be racing. And with the track temperatures only down at 32 degrees Celsius, considering that traditionally GT3 cars race around here in the Australian summer, that's quite temperate. That's not bad. This is where the temperature seems to be rising just a little bit more. Yatlong, after that mistake, has been able to settle things down just a little bit, but here over the top of the skyline once more, beginning that drop, your stomach falls away from you, and it's through the dipper where you want to get as close to the left-hand side as you can. The 11 a little bit wide. Yatlong with a big mistake, though, and two cars almost make it on through. Norhidia, I think, made some contact.
That's Mura. Mura's facing the wrong way, and they had to avoid him, and I think Sharman has been involved in that. So, yeah, Mura, there was definitely a blue car that had hit a wall.
It was Yatlong, not Mura, sorry.
Oh, it's Yatlong, was it? Okay, so they were facing the wrong way then. But yeah, that means Sharman then gains a position. He's moved up to P3 once they've indeed figured out their themselves. But yeah, that was not ideal, and that's what can happen if someone makes a mistake right in front of you over the mountain. As Yatlong sends one up the inside of Newman and gets that job done. But yeah, you make a mistake across the mountain, and someone's in close proximity to you, they're also involved in that. It's as simple as that. It's not ideal. It's actually Giacomin now. It's just set the fastest lap of the race.
Interesting, and maybe showing us that gap between the top two might just come on down a tad. Yatlong still in 6th position, and seemingly with a number 15 that's not taken too much outside damage, just maybe damage to the ego so far, and needs to avoid pushing those tires for too long, clear some debris and settle back into a bit of a rhythm. Unfortunately, Yatlong, not too much damage. Number 5 can't say the same, down to pit lane and getting some repairs.
Yeah, and through the dipper, you don't tend to get massive damage because it's quite, it's not the quickest of corners, and you normally just scrape the barrier and it will send you in a spin. So, yeah, I think you're going to get away with that 9 times out of 10 in terms of, race running damage. But like you said, it is not good for your ego, and it's going to make you drive differently for the rest of this race because you don't want to be doing it again. We're going to get a lovely look at the dipper here. So look at him. You can see turning into the wall and then just letting the car rotate through. But this is an absolute clinic from Sang right now. 2 seconds in the lead, not have to push too crazily. Opening up then the Forest elbow. Well, he's just
now.
stopped.
Is this a technical issue? Because Sang's crawled to a stop and Giacomin's gone on through on the exit of the elbow. Not all looking right there. Our race leader having some drama, and now Sharman's going to cycle through as well.
Yeah, he's just stopped. He's quite literally just stopped. So, yeah, everyone coming through. Double yellow's being waved, of course. They filter out to the outside of that corner anyway. And he must have some sort of technical issue. Near Hidiat, by the way, in the pits. Wonder if they might be retiring from this race. Newton now up to P9, so absolutely flying through the pack right now. But yeah, it was easy for Sang, and now he's decided to go down the order. I wonder if he might just get going again. He goes to the back, and then he goes, do you know what, I want to practice some overtaking, knowing that they're all going to qualify for the next stage of this competition. I'm not sure that's quite the case. I think there might be a technical issue. Well, but right now, Giacomin, who did just take the fastest lap, is now in the lead.
I'm just wondering, as there is the number 1 car that now has an 8-second advantage at the front, there's a couple of things that could have happened. Maybe, pedals slipped away from where he had had them mounted. Could have also been something that I've seen before, where some people race on TVs. Sorry, go ahead.
He's in the pits, so he's now made his way to the pits.
So I think just reinforcing it's a technical issue, but one thing that if you're racing on a TV, some TVs will turn themselves off after a certain amount of time. So I was wondering if that might have been it, pulled to the side of the road so that he could reset it. But it seemed a little bit more intentional than that, and maybe we can get an update before the end of the next 20 minutes.
Yeah, hopefully we do get the update on that because it'd be nice to know what's exactly happened there as we see Giacomin now actually catching up to some lap traffic. I think that's near Hidiat then, who has had to make a trip through the pit lane. That's why they're a little bit further down the order. Actually moves over to the left-hand side. And Giacomin will be very happy with that. As soon as you see back traffic, you're kind of just hoping they get out of the way. And yeah, Julie has done that.
Doesn't want to be any sort of a trouble for the race leader. And still with 20 minutes to go. As we mentioned, these drivers are all going to be competing against each other in the regional finals again. So they will be very familiar with one another when they go racing once again in just a couple of weeks' time, and so that's definitely going to be something on their minds. Yat Long's had an eventful start to this race, 10 minutes done, and still in 5th position, but now up to 4th position, I should say, but not looking necessarily, Luke, very comfortable with the challenge that Mount Panorama poses.
Yes, definitely the most difficult way of getting to P4. Comfortably in P3, spins, loses out down to P7 and makes their way back up to P4 in 2 laps. So, yeah, I'm not sure when Yat Long woke up this morning was thinking, that's how I'm going to get into a top 4. That's for sure. It's been very difficult by himself, but still doing a pretty good job. Still in P4, and we'll look to try and get up towards those podium spots. I can't quite see the delta as it stands here, so I'm not sure how far they're behind Sharman, but Sharman is a little bit further up the road. But I think that's it shows really what Yat Long's all about, what sort of raw pace Yat Long has, because as soon as they dropped out of that top sort of 3 battle, instantly, clawing the way back, making overtakes. Like, it's not taking long to get back up to race pace and maybe trying to, or maybe should, close down to Sharman by the end of this race. Gap now between the front 2 is 10 seconds, then it's 4 seconds further back to P3, then it's about 8 seconds. It was 8 seconds last time they crossed a timing beam. As they come through, it's 8.1 seconds. So Yat Long is actually catching up to Sharman. So 18 minutes, 40 seconds. I think we might see a battle for that top 3 before the end.
All hangs on the fate of whether Yat Long's going to have another issue. Does look like that 15's really being hustled around, and so incidents just that little bit easier to pick on up. We jump back up to 3rd, where Sharman's been able to take advantage of all the drama to cycle up to a podium spot. Mura's, of course, in that yellow 296, jumped up to 2nd. Ours looking good, and one thing that often is talked about at Mount Panorama is the fact that we actually race almost a kilometer above sea level, which of course means that naturally aspirated engines sometimes struggle a bit to get maximum power, but that's why it's a good thing that the 296 is turbocharged. Forces a bit more air through the engine, gets a little bit more power, benefit when you're at altitude.
Yeah, definitely. They're all in the same car, regardless of whether it was a positive or negative for the Ferrari, so it's always going to be the same effect for everybody. But yeah, you're right. This the Ferrari suited to Mount Panorama / Bathurst perfectly. Go back through the order again then. So Giacomin, who we're not on board with, by the way, has a faster lap P1. Mura 2nd. We've then got Sharman in 3rd. Yat Long 4th. Lay, Newman are your top 6 plumber. Jeff Newton, who's absolutely charging towards P7 in P8. We've then got Anderson and Nur Hidiat as your top 10. And we've lost Sang. Sang has gone. So again, hopefully we get an update as to what's exactly happened there. But the driver that looks the fastest from the region is not going to finish this race. I'm not sure what the rules and regulations have on that, but hopefully we do get to see him later in this competition.
Yeah, that's a good point. Lap times that were being punched in were, 2:01s, which is not that far off what we would see in some of the top-level SRO Esports sort of competitions as well. So that's certainly a promising lap time. It will be interesting to see how the drivers from this region, of course, who will head on to the regional finals, will match up with some of the drivers that we'll see tomorrow in Europe's European region, as Ben Newman hits the wall running up outside of Quarry Corner. But America's region as well, some of those drivers have to go through the actual full heat system in Asia that's been condensed down to 1 race. Europe and America is going to be split across 2 different races. It's going to be interesting to see how they all mix up once we get to the grand final.
Yeah, it is that. Are there going to be a few people that, are going to sandbag here, maybe give the impression that they're not as quick as they are, and then in the finals really showcase what their skill set is. Maybe that's what Sang's decided to do. But yeah, Giacomin right now isn't looking back. He's been given the opportunity to be P1 and is absolutely flying now. The gap 13 seconds to Mura.
Just pushing and pushing and bringing those lap times down while being consistent as well. That's the most important thing. Here's Yat Long, who's now a full 5 seconds in front of number 17 machine, but the gap to the podium hasn't come down so much as we jump on board with Yat Long and take a trip around the Mount Panorama circuit across the line to begin the lap and in through Hell Corner, named for more historic reasons, but I call it Hell Corner just because it's so frustrating, and when you get it wrong, it frustrates you until you can get back around the entire lap. Up and down the mountain straight, the car never truly settles, and as mentioned earlier, a bump on the outside on the rise up in towards this very crucial turn number 2. You want to make sure you're on the inside if you're battling. Push the car up to the outside and bring it up towards the cutting, where lift off the throttle if you're really feeling a little bit tentative, but Yat Long's pushing all the way through, powers through on the throttle and then down through the gears and back onto the throttle as aggressively as possible. This, Luke, is where you get to the very top of the track and you have pushed the car plenty using the engine. It's from here that you use gravity to help you descend.
Yeah, 100%. As soon as you get towards Skyline, you know it is all downhill from there. And it's very, very easy to make a mistake over here. I remember leading Bathurst 12 hour in 2021 by 2 laps. We were leading by a full 2 laps, and one of our drivers unfortunately made a mistake into that gravel, into the wall, and our car engine blew up, so we were no longer a part of that race. So yeah, you're not only you racing the drivers, you are racing the circuit. It is as simple as that. It is Monaco on steroids. This place is so unique. I love it. Personally, I love it, but it's so difficult to get correct. We're getting a lovely look back then shot of Plummer. We're on board with Newman though, and there is Plummer, who is behind Newman. So they're coming down the Conrad straight over the dip here. It's blind. As you come over it, you sweep over to the left, you'll notice that there's a bit of tarmac to the left-hand side. There we go. They'll use that to open up this right-hander because they are flat out. And it's on the brakes then around about the 150-meter board, a little bit later. It's a downhill braking zone, so it extends the braking zone. And then we head down towards the final corner using all of the curb on the exit of the penultimate corner. And then through the final corner, we will go. They'll stay away from the inside corner, but they'll run out onto the exit, or should I say, they'll stay away from the inside curb on the final corner, but they'll use all of the curb on the exit. Across the line we will go, and that is a lap of Mount Panorama.
Confirmation, by the way, from the race lead. There was a technical issue for Sang that unfortunately saw him pull to the side, but was able to do so in a safe way. So that's the most important thing. And well, hopefully that will not stop him from advancing to the next phase of the tournament. But we will have to wait and see whether that's going to end up playing out. Ben Sharma now sits in 3rd position and 7 seconds in front of Yat Long. That gap's not come down at a rate of knots like we were expecting, Luke, and I don't necessarily think Yat Long's going to be the one to try and put some pressure on forward. There's some other drivers, though, really starting to feel it.
Yeah, 100%. I think Lay is the prime example here, being closed in from, Plummer, closing in onto Newman, although over the mountain section, it's like Newman's got the number of Plummer. Plummer using the slipstream to his advantage. Oh, it's so easy to run over that curb and you're in trouble. Sharman, who had a bit of a wake-up call at the start of this race, is P3 as it stands. Lost out of position early on through turn number 4 after tagging the wall. Since then, has been very good. We're on board with Yat Long as we come down that Conrad straight. We're about to cut a timing beam here as well, so you see exactly how far Yat Long is behind Sharman. Is 7.1 seconds. Very unlikely that we're going to see any potential movement right now. The gaps, the shortest gap right now is Plummer and Newman. That's really the battle we want to focus on. See if Plummer can get themselves into a top 6 position. But the top 5 are pretty much nailed right now. Giacomin, Mura, Sharman, Yat Long, and Lay. That is your top 5. And then we've got this battle here, which is starting to bubble up nicely.
Looks like Newman's pulling away from Plummer. The problem becomes that you've got Newton charging hard, as Luke mentioned earlier. That's catching the both of them, and with less than 12 minutes to go, it means less than 6 laps to run for these drivers. For Newton, the best that we're going to see from him after the drive-through for being too far back in the start formation is going to potentially be a P6. And that's an interesting one, Luke, because the Assetto Corsa Competizione start system instructs you on what to do. It's always saying you need to be in front, behind, left or right. It's trying to keep you up to date. It's not often that we see drivers getting penalties for the start unless they're jumping the start and trying to be a bit too aggressive.
Yeah, he was further back, right? So he was actually not gaining advantage. He lost out big time. But it's all based on the cars around you. So if one person's slightly out of their box, then it puts you slightly out. So you kind of have to figure it out as you go. It's different each time. So yeah, it's just a bit unfortunate there for Newton. and I'm expecting Newton to be massive in this championship. I was commentating on a championship last year where there was an open wheel segment, as we're about to see a move potentially. There's no way it's going to be into Skyline, maybe into the chicane before the dipper. Not quite close enough. Are we going to see a send? No, we're not. So Newton's got to be patient. But yeah, I was commentating on a championship last year where there was an open wheel segment, a stock car segment, and a sports car segment. And Newton, for the APAC region, was the only driver who qualified for the final in every single one of them. So that's why I was saying he's one of the favourites. Like, he has got, he's very well known in the region, but he has some unbelievable talent. As Plummer just decides to let Newton go. And, well, he not only let him go, he pretty much stopped there, and he doesn't even want to be in the slipstream of Newton. He just wants to get to the end of this race and get towards the finals, I guess. But Newton putting on a bit of a show. He's going to catch up to Newman and Lay, so that'll be a nice little three-way battle coming up shortly.
Yeah, I think for Plummer, just the understanding that getting to the end of 30 minutes at Mount Panorama is a success in and of itself. You mentioned doing a 12-hour race here is one of the most difficult races in all of motorsports. Alexander Premont once described this track as a mixture of the Nordschleife, Road Atlanta, and Laguna Seca, and it's been dubbed the Blue Hell for a reason. It's very much earned that nickname, and I feel like for Newman is definitely in play to be able to get to 6, but then it's 7 seconds up to Lay. With 9 minutes-ish to go, that seems like asking for a bit too much. Although Giacomin's just running at the front, and as much as he's scaring Luke, looks pretty comfortable in the body language of the car.
Yeah, 100%. The 19-second advantage there is a very comfortable advantage to be looking at. But he massively pushed the dipper there. He didn't need to, but I think he's trying to go faster and faster and faster and keep improving on that fastest lap, to be completely honest there. And when you're in this kind of rhythm, that's probably the best way to go about things, Arjuna. Sometimes when you let off the gas and you kind of just try and coast across the line, that's where mistakes can creep in, especially around a circuit such as this.
Yes, no. There's a couple of different ways. Well, there's a couple of different ways to approach this. There are some drivers that need to run to the muscle memory they have, right? They need to just be able to hit their marks lap after lap. There are some drivers that are very good at being able to read and adapt to a situation, and when they know they don't have to push the car as much, they'll back up their braking markers by 5%. They'll be less aggressive on the brakes as well, something that when you have brake wear that's simulated on Assetto Corsa Competizione for those longer races, that's something that comes into play. But those are the drivers that are willing to change up the rhythm. I can't do it. I need to just be able to run at whatever speed I've practiced.
Yeah, I need to be like that as well, to be completely honest. By the way, Plummer has absolutely dropped off a cliff here. Newton now up to 7th position. 5.1 seconds behind. Plummer let him go, didn't he, actually, earlier on, to be fair. So, yeah, Newton catching up to Newman. I'm not sure whether there's going to be enough time for that to happen. 7 minutes to go. 4 laps to go? 3.5 for the leader. So, yeah, not too long for Newton to make up any more positions. But he did go down to P11 after a drive-through at the start, so he's done pretty well to make his way up the order. Here's Yuzuki Miura in P14 as it stands, 20.2 seconds behind. Miura, who was one of the very strongest drivers when we had the qualifying events. I believe Miura raced at Kota for us, actually, and just looked really, really strong there at Kota. And maybe met their match in Giacomin. Giacomin, who was, I would say, slower than Sang once Sang was leading. But yeah, since Sang's disappeared, Giacomin has just looked untouchable. Oh, Anderson into the pits as well.
Anderson into the pits, but it didn't seem to do so well through the course of this race, as that's a mistake in front of Miura by the lapped car. Hidiat's going to slide wide through the elbow, or slide to the inside through the elbow. Scares us, but I don't think necessarily was trying to bring too much drama there. I think what we are seeing right now, Luke, is a bit of the case where drivers with Assetto Corsa Competizione experience are showing up quite strongly. The exception there is Ben Sharman, who was third in his qualifying race on Assetto Corsa at the Nürburgring. He is running up in third here on Assetto Corsa Competizione as well.
Yeah, it's a really good point there. So Giacomin, he qualified at Spa. He got a P1. We've got Sang, who was P1 at Silverstone. He was leading this race, but unfortunately not in this. Ben Newman was, or should we go in order actually? Yeah, Sharman. He managed to get a P3, like I said, at the Nürburgring. We then have Yat Long, who managed to get P1 at Monza. Newman managed to get a P2 earlier on in this championship at Laguna Seca. We've then got Brian Lay, who managed to get a P3 at Silverstone. Plummer, who's currently in P8, was a P3 at Spa-Francorchamps. And then Anderson got a P1 at the Nürburgring. So, yeah, it's actually quite a nice mix. But, yeah, the front two, for sure. They're just used to being right up the sharp end of races. It's really as simple as that.
Still look at Giacomin, by the way. We were saying that maybe tyres were going to be a factor, but coming towards what will be 2 laps to go, still within half a second of what is the fastest lap of the race, not just for this car, but for every car, because we didn't get to see what Chris Sang might have done. I feel like going into the regional finals, the form book somewhat set as Ben Newman sees, well, Newton slammed the wall out of the cutting just in desperation to push and try and close even more. Oh! Newman's going to make a big mistake over the top out of Quarry just before Frog Hollow, and Jeff Newton piled the pressure on and now is in 5th.
How much are Newton and Newman pushing? Yes, is the answer. Both of them making mistakes there. Newman's being a little bit more so than what we saw. And actually now Brian Lay all of a sudden is right behind Newman. So there's a potential battle here. I would imagine Newman's going to struggle for pace as well after that massive clatter into the wall. It wasn't a small hit, that's for sure. Through the Forest Elbow, as we see, is it Anderson? I think Anderson there, just getting out of the way, everybody's way. But that was not ideal, and that's what can happen. You know, it can happen at any point during a race, but nearer the end of a race where the concentration may be lacking ever so slightly, you can genuinely put yourself in a very handy position into a very bad position super quick.
Absolutely. And let's not forget, it can also be self-inflicted. Flick the traction control off, head out of the final corner, and get a bit too exuberant with the throttle, spin yourself around. Mitchie Tauscher definitely knows nothing about that. One thing that I will say for Jeff Newton, by the way, is that the lap times that we've seen from him, not necessarily what you are seeing from the drivers at the front, but I think part of that is just having to pass plenty of other cars. I think part of that might as well be just a bit of aftermath of a bit of an interesting start for Newton after being slightly out of formation. Remember, there was contact through that opening corner and maybe some lasting damage as a result. Newman feeding draft to Lay through the mountain straight, but I don't think that 17's close enough to have a look into turn 2.
No, not quite close enough. 1.5 laps remaining for these, or just over 1.5 laps. And at this stage, if you want to make an overtake, I think you've got to try and catch them by surprise. Newman hugging that inside line. Very difficult to make an overtake here unless you're fully committed and you make it known very, very early that you're going to make a move. Otherwise, you're both going to end up facing the wrong way and in a wall. Anderson into the pits now as it stands. Oh, here we go. Bit of onboard action then from Lay. And as soon as we get involved with some onboard action and, you know, potentially a move being made, he's into the wall as well. And this is Bathurst 101. You are always within an extra mile an hour of putting yourself in a wall and ending your race.
And GZ3 cars rely on aerodynamics. Brian was running in the dirty air of the car in front. That was not necessarily helping. And unfortunately, end result sliding wide, just pushing that little bit too much. Andrew Plummer was the red 296 that was able to take advantage, but you heard it from the race director. Our leaders onto the final lap of the race. 30 minutes have really flown on past. It's one more trip up and down the mountain for Giacomin.
It certainly is, and we're going to give him a bit of camera time, because normally when you're leading the race by quite a considerable margin, you don't really get much of that time to yourself. So it's nice to see that we are going to show Giacomin on screen as he comes over the mountain one more time. Again, you know, you make a mistake on this final lap, you could lose that victory. It is as simple as that. You've got to still keep it within the mayo and the mustard as we come then through Skyline, down towards the chicane that adjoins to the Dipper. You see him once again turning heavy left, almost driving into the wall. There we go. Look. Oh, really, really close there to the wall as we head now towards the Forest Elbow, onto the Conrod Straight, and then into the final chicane and the final corner. Merely a third of the lap to go of this 15-lap race, and he's looked good, hasn't he?
He's looked very good. Didn't let Sang get too far away even before the technical issues, had punched in the fastest lap just moments before that and took full advantage to take the point, and now a couple of corners away from cycling one step closer to the grand finals of the 2023 Ferrari Esports Series.
Was P2 when Sang made the mistake, but you've got to make sure you're in a position to take advantage of people having issues. Giacomin is going to come across the line and pick up our first regional heats win here at Bathurst. Congratulations to Giacomin, a very, very nice performance. It's going to take some time for Mura to cross the line, as is the gap, because it's Mura. Mura in second spot, only coming out the final chicane now, down towards that final corner. Giacomin has set a marker to the rest of the region heading into our finals. The number 14 car then of Mura will pick up P2 and a nice handy podium. Mura only deals in podiums. It really is as simple as that, as we see the checkered flag go across the track. Next driver to come across line is the number 11. It is Sharman, and he will round out our top three. Let's have a look at our official results then. Giacomin picks up P1. Mura in second position. Sharman in third. Yatlong is in fourth. Jeff Newton fifth. Newman in sixth position. Plummer and Lay round out your top eight. And then Anderson, who was in the pits at the end there, 3 laps down in P9.
Well.
What a circuit.
Yes, what a circuit. Not too much drama, some drama, but not as much drama as we were quite fearful for them going into that, and it wasn't too bad.
A lot of precision out there, right? A lot of precision driving.
Yeah, some better than others, for sure. 2 definite standouts with Sang and Giacomin. But yeah, it's a very unique track, and it was a unique situation for the drivers to be in with this particular region.
Absolutely. Sang actually, unfortunately, had a hardware failure during the race and had to pull over to the side, which is not what you want in terms of your morale and getting the measure of your competitors going into the final.
He'll be absolutely fine.
You think so?
He was 2 seconds clear after about 3 laps, I think, and
he's got the pace.
He has the pace, I think, over the rest of the field. I think Giacomin's not too far behind, but then there is quite a chasm between those two and the rest of the drivers. So I think, we were saying at the top of the show around who would be the strongest drivers. I think it's those two, especially, that going into these next phases of the competition, we really need to look out for.
I think that hardware failure thing it's a bit like real motorsport. You can have mechanical issues that will ruin your race, and that is something that these drivers are going to have to be mindful of in the final as well. Yeah,
and it's not like he's not like he was in practice and he could just press restart. Like it happens, and unfortunately, there's no way of let's just go back to the start again, and that's not going to happen. Hopefully, it doesn't happen to him in the next phases where his position counts a lot more. But yeah, I'm sure he'll be
checking absolutely every cable connection, internet. Yeah. But I mean, I think so far ahead. Like you're saying, I don't think it's going to ruin his confidence at all in any way.
No, he looked very quick out the blocks. He wasn't even under pressure into turn 1. He was gone. So I'm really interested to see how far he can go in the competition in particular.
I'll tell you who I was impressed by, Yatlong, actually, because he was really the man on the move. In terms of overtakes and racecraft, that was the guy who really caught my eye.
Yeah, Yatlong was definitely good. I think the pace is maybe lacking in terms of actual fastest laps. When you look at it, it's a couple of seconds off, I think, the leaders. But Newton was also very impressive. Not so impressive getting a drive-through at the beginning of the race and overtaking a little bit too early at the beginning. But the way in which he came back, 'cause I think he was right at the back of the field after he had that drive-through and was fighting through and really showing that he's got that prowess to make it through and has got that racecraft.
It's not easy to make moves around the circuit, as we've said. Certainly in the mountain section, there's no place to overtake, really. Maybe Forest Elbow right at the end of that segment, if you're lucky. But it's tricky around here.
Oh, it certainly is. I think Newton was actually lucky in that some drivers recognised that Newton was slightly out of place and decided to maybe just let off the gas a little bit and let him through. And, you see that in all forms of racing, that sometimes it's just not worth having that fight, especially if there's a certain amount of drivers that make it through. But yeah, Newton was good. It'd be interesting to see how close he could have got had he not had that drive-through, because he was right at the front of the field with Sang and Giacomin as well.
It's really tricky, those little errors. You spend all your time optimising, trying to get the fastest lap, but a small mistake at the very beginning, for example, being out of position at the start, can cost you all of that optimisation right at the beginning, and you're playing catch-up for the rest of the race.
Yeah, it would have been gutting for him a little bit because I'm sure he would have liked to have seen how he stacked up against the front runners. But I guess also he knew he was qualifying, so it's not like he was probably like, and then he's like, I'm going to have a bit of fun now. So yeah, and he showed that.
But it's important to get the measure of your competitors, right? If these are some of the folks you're going to be coming up against in the finals, then you really need to be able to get an idea of whether you can put a move on them, whether they're going to be, robust in their defence, or whether they're going to be, easy to pass. And getting that kind of knowledge download is quite important at this stage.
Yeah, I think Jacobin is probably the one that is probably kicking himself a little bit around Sang having that failure, because he would have wanted to see just how close he was to Sang, who's definitely the quickest in this region. Because you look at the fastest laps, I think Jacobin had a 2-minute 0.9 as his fastest lap. Sang had a 2-minute 1.1, but let's not forget, that was right at the beginning of the race. You're brimmed full of fuel. So I'm sure that fastest lap would have come down quite substantially.
That's a good point, yeah.
Maybe it was a strategic move, just I've
I've
drawn the line in the sand, I got ahead, I can tap out now.
I mean, I guess he's an unknown quantity, right? Which is a good way to be, because if you don't want, if you know you're going to be on the pace and you're going to get through, actually, you kind of don't want to show your hand a little too early.
Exactly. I mean, we saw the hand for 3 laps, and then it was like, nope, no more.
What a race and what a tournament it's been so far. We've seen the best of the best battle it out, and we now have our final 11 drivers from the APAC region.
Yes, congratulations to Luca Giacomin, Yusuke Miura, Ben Sharman, Hoon-Yak Long, Jeff Newton, Ben Newman,
Andrew Plummer, Brian Lay, Stuart Anderson, Irfan Nur Hidayat and Chris Sang.
Congratulations to all of our drivers from today, as we're going to be seeing them in that grand final very, very soon.
Yes, and Matt, would you like to remind us where we're heading for that grand final?
Well, it wouldn't be a Ferrari tournament without finishing with some epic Italian style.
Yes.
Going to Misano.
Oof. I'm super excited. Look, I packed my bag. Oh, yeah. We can leave right after the show.
It's an esports tournament, Mike.
Unbelievable.
Yeah, so sorted that out. Don't forget to stay tuned, as we've got our EU regional heats in just a few hours' time. But if not, we will see you in our grand finals very, very soon. See you then.